Hello, I'm Sophia Tobin, and I'm going to be reading from The Silversmith's Wife, my debut novel, which centres around the murder of a silversmith in 18th century London. She thought later how strange it was that he should make such a mess of it. Dear Dr. Taylor, who was normally so authoritative, so used as a doctor to presiding over birth and death. Yet there he was, walking up and down her parlour, the floorboards protesting beneath his heavy feet, his hesitant speech fading to a mumble as he groped for words. He said her husband's name several times, as though by saying it, it would give him the momentum to speak on. But each time his voice trailed off, and he muttered the name of Digby and spoke of Berkeley Square and of footpads. "Please tell me what has happened," she said eventually. Taylor ceased his pacing. He stood over her. It was odd to see his face, which usually bore an expression of jovial kindness, twisted with sorrow, the shadows and the firelight laying contrast on it, making him seem gargoyle-like. "He's dead," he said. "Someone has taken him from us. I'm sorry, so very sorry." Then, hesitantly, "Marie." It was the use of her Christian name that most clearly showed his distress. Until this night, he had never said it. A fat tear rolled down his cheek. Mary stared at the floorboards and the turkey rug that Pierre had made such a fuss over. "Make sure it is brushed, Ellen, and brushed properly," he had said to the maid before he left. There was a spot of dirt on it. She had to resist falling onto her knees and picking it up, pincering it between the nails of her thumb and forefinger before Pierre came back and saw it. "Has the constable been called?" she said. "The watchman will make his report to him, but when he was found, there was no one nearby." "How did he die?" she said. She knew it was an unladylike question, but she also knew that in his current state, Taylor would tell her. Tomorrow it would be too late, but for now, all delicacy and convention had flown. "They cut his throat," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. Tick-tock went Pierre's lantern clock, and as Mary's eyes darted around the room, all she could see were the things chosen by her husband, for he had crafted his home carefully. She gazed on the dull brass colour of the lantern clock. It was over 100 years old, he'd told her when he bought it. She would have preferred something else in this room, something made of wood. Something feminine, he'd scoffed. Everything in the house had been done to his liking. Except for the papers in this room, cream with little scarlet fruits. They had agreed on the choice, startling each other with acquiescence. She heard the doctor pull a chair towards her and felt him take her hands. They were unexpectedly rough. He was an accoucheur, and she'd always assumed his hands would be soft, silken, for attending to a woman's most delicate parts. But no, these were large paws, chapped, as though if you stroked them the wrong way, the skin would rise up like scales. "I never had a child," she thought, "and I never will now. In this, as in so many ways, I failed my husband and my family." She closed her eyes and thought, "My poor dead father and his promises."